Jack Miller drove his old pickup truck along the narrow dirt road. Tall pine trees lined both sides. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The cabin was still 2 miles away, but already he felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. 3 weeks alone, he said to himself. Just what I need. The divorce papers had come through last Tuesday. 6 years of marriage gone, just like that. Linda had taken the house, the car, and even the dog. Jack was left with his clothes, his grandfather's cabin, and a deep sadness that wouldn't go away. The cabin came into view as Jack rounded the final bend. It wasn't much to look at, just a simple wooden structure built by his grandfather 40 years ago. The roof needed fixing, and the porch had a slight tilt, but to Jack, it was perfect. No phones, no internet, no people. Just him, the forest, and the quiet. Jack parked the truck and grabbed his bags from the back. The air smelled of pine and coming rain. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. He would need to get the generator running before the storm hit. Inside, the cabin was dusty, but familiar. One main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, a bathroom, and 2 doors, one leading to the bedroom, the other to a storage closet. Jack dropped his bags on the worn couch and opened a window to let in fresh air. Home sweet home, he said, running his hand along the wooden table his grandfather had built. Jack spent the next few hours cleaning and setting up. He stocked the kitchen with the food he'd brought, made the bed with fresh sheets, and got the generator working. By the time he finished, the storm clouds had moved in, bringing with them a steady rain that tapped on the roof. That night, Jack sat by the fireplace with a cup of hot coffee, listening to the storm grow stronger. Wind howled around the cabin corners. Rain pelted the windows. Occasionally, thunder boomed, shaking the small building. Jack added another log to the fire and opened his book, a mystery novel he'd been meaning to read for months. The storm grew, worse as midnight approached. Jack was about to head to bed when a particularly loud crack of thunder hit, followed by the sound of a tree falling somewhere in the forest. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Perfect, Jack muttered. He found his flashlight in his bag and switched it on. The beam cut through the darkness as he made his way to the kitchen drawer, where his grandfather kept candles. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it beneath the howling wind. A soft thud, followed by what sounded like breathing. It came from the storage closet. Jack froze. He wasn't supposed to have company. The cabin was 5 miles from the nearest neighbor. Could it be an animal? A raccoon, or maybe a fox that had somehow gotten in before his arrival. The sound came again. Definitely breathing, and definitely not an animal. Jack's heart pounded. He looked around for something to use as a weapon and grabbed a heavy flashlight from the counter. Who's there? He called out, pointing his light toward the closet door. No answer came, but the breathing stopped abruptly. Jack approached slowly. Step by careful step, the floorboards creaked beneath his weight. Outside, the storm raged on, rain hammering against the roof. I know someone's in there, Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm going to open this door now. His hand gripped the door handle. Jack took a deep breath and pulled the door open in one quick motion. Flashlight raised. The beam of light revealed a figure huddled in the corner of the closet, partially hidden behind some old fishing gear. Jack blinked, certain his eyes were playing tricks on him. It was a woman. At least, she looked somewhat like a woman. Her skin had a strange bluish tint that seemed to shimmer slightly in the flashlight beam. Her eyes were large, too large for a human face, and completely silver, with no visible pupils. Those eyes reflected his flashlight with an unnatural glow, like a cat's eyes, but much brighter. She wore what looked like a one-piece suit made of a material Jack had never seen before. It had a metallic sheen, but moved like fabric. The suit was torn in several places, revealing more of that strange blue skin underneath. Dark liquid, blood, had dried around a wound on her arm. Jack stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The woman, the creature, pressed herself further into the corner, those silver eyes never leaving his face. Her breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. "What, who are you?" Jack finally managed to say. The being made no response except to tremble. More violently. Slowly, Jack lowered his flashlight so it wasn't shining directly in her face. He crouched down to appear less threatening. "Are you hurt?" he asked, keeping his voice soft. Still no verbal response, but her eyes flickered to the wound on her arm, then back to his face. Jack reached out his hand slowly, thinking to check the injury. The reaction was immediate and violent. She flinched, away from him, pressing herself even harder against the wall, a sound escaping her that was somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Her face contorted in an expression Jack recognized despite her alien features. Fear. Pure, unmistakable fear. Jack immediately withdrew his hand and moved back. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "I promise." For a long moment, they stayed. Like that, Jack crouched a few feet away, the strange woman huddled in the corner. The storm continued to rage outside, a flash of lightning briefly illuminating the room through the windows. In that brief flash, Jack noticed something else, a small device attached to the woman's suit near her shoulder. It blinked with a faint red light, rhythmically, like some kind of beacon. "You're not from around here, are you?" Jack whispered, though he already knew the answer. "Not from anywhere on Earth, I'm guessing." The woman tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand his words. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and pointed upward. "Space?" Jack asked. "You're from up there?" She blinked those silver eyes once, which Jack took as confirmation. Jack sat back on his heels, running a hand through his hair. "Well," he said, trying to process this impossible situation, "I guess we both picked a hell of a night to be in this cabin." Outside, the storm showed no signs of letting up. Thunder boomed again, and the alien woman startled at the sound. Jack noticed she was shivering, whether from fear or cold, he couldn't tell. Slowly, Jack stood up. The woman tensed again, watching his every move. "Stay here," he said, making a staying motion with his hand. "I'll be right back." Jack backed away and went to his bedroom. He returned with a blanket and a first aid kit. Keeping his movements slow and deliberate, he placed both items on the floor and slid them toward her. "For you," he said. "The blanket is for warmth. And this," he pointed to the first aid kit, "might help with that." He gestured to her wounded arm. The woman looked at the offerings, then back at Jack. Cautiously, she reached for the blanket, never taking her eyes off him. When her fingers touched the soft fabric, she seemed surprised. She pulled it toward her and wrapped it around her shoulders. Jack sat down cross-legged on the floor, keeping a respectful distance. "My name is Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "Jack Miller." The woman watched him silently, the blanket clutched tightly around her. The fear in her eyes had lessened slightly, but she remained wary, alert to his every movement. As the storm continued through the night, Jack knew his solitary retreat had just become something else entirely. Whatever, whoever this being was, she was injured, afraid, and a very, very long way from home. And somehow she had found her way to his grandfather's cabin in the middle of nowhere. Jack settled in for a long night. "Looks like we've got a lot to figure out," he said softly. "But first things first, you're safe here. I promise." The alien woman didn't respond, but as Jack spoke, he noticed her shoulders relax just slightly beneath the blanket. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Morning came with gentle sunlight filtering through the cabin windows. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a fresh, clean smell in the air. Jack opened his eyes slowly. He had fallen asleep sitting against the wall, across from the storage closet. For a moment, he wondered if the events of the night before had been a dream. Then he saw her. The alien woman sat exactly where she had been, still wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Her silver eyes watched him carefully. She hadn't moved all night. "Good morning," Jack said softly, stretching his stiff muscles. "Are you hungry?" The woman tilted her head, not understanding the words, but seeming to recognize the question in his tone. Jack mimicked eating, bringing an imaginary spoon to his mouth. Her eyes widened slightly in recognition. Jack stood up slowly and moved to the kitchen area, keeping his movements casual and unthreatening. He could feel her eyes following him as he put a pot of water on the camp stove, the electricity still out from the storm. "Let's try something simple," he said, more to fill the silence than because she would understand. He took out some bread, fruit, and a bottle of water. Jack arranged the food on a plate and brought it over, setting it down halfway between them. He took an apple for himself, bit into it, and chewed deliberately, showing it was safe to eat. The alien woman watched him for a long moment. Slowly, carefully, she unwrapped one arm from the blanket and reached for the plate. Her movements were graceful, despite her obvious caution. Her fingers, Jack noticed, were longer than human fingers with an extra joint. She picked up a strawberry, examined it, then put it to her lips. Her face registered surprise, then something like pleasure. She ate the strawberry quickly and reached for another. "You like that, huh?" Jack smiled. "That's a good sign." Over the next hour, Jack watched as she tried each item on the plate. She seemed to enjoy the fruits most of all, especially the berries. The bread she approached more cautiously, taking tiny bites and considering each one carefully. 8. Jack got his first good look at her in daylight. Her blue-tinted skin had a subtle pattern to it, almost like very fine scales that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was not hair at all, but rather something like thin, flexible filaments that moved slightly on their own. They were a deeper blue than her skin, almost black in certain lights. The device on her shoulder continued to blink rhythmically. Jack wondered what it was. A communicator? A tracking device? Some kind of life support? When she finished eating, Jack decided to try communication again. He pointed to himself. "Jack," he said clearly. The alien watched him, then slowly raised her hand to point at him. "Jack," she said, the sound clearly difficult for her to form. Her voice had a musical quality, like chimes in a light breeze. Jack smiled broadly. "Yes." "Jack," he pointed to her. "And you?" She touched her chest. From her mouth came a sound Jack couldn't hope to reproduce, something like Lyra Rethel, with tones that seemed to layer over each other. "Lyra?" Jack tried, taking the closest approximation he could manage. She made that sound again, then nodded, seeming to accept his version. "Lyra," she repeated, separating the syllables as he had. "Nice to meet you, Lyra," Jack said. For the first time, the alien woman, Lyra, gave what might have been a smile. It wasn't quite like a human smile, more a softening around her eyes and a slight parting of her lips, revealing teeth that were pearly white and more pointed than human. Teeth. Jack decided to try something else. He went to get his notepad and pencil, then sat down cross-legged a comfortable distance from her. He drew a simple picture of the cabin, then a stick figure inside it that he labeled Jack. Next to it, he drew another figure and wrote Lyra. Lyra leaned forward with interest. Jack handed her the pencil. After examining it for a moment, she took it and added to his drawing. She drew a simple spaceship in the sky above the cabin. Then she drew an arrow from the ship to the ground. "You crashed?" Jack asked, making a downward motion with his hand and then a crashing sound. Lyra nodded, her expression growing somber. She pointed to the wound on her arm, which looked better than it had the night before. The dark liquid had dried completely, and the edges of the injury seemed to be closing already. "You heal fast," Jack observed. Next, Lyra drew several more figures in the ship, then made an X over all but one, which had an arrow pointing to her figure by the cabin. "The only survivor," Jack said quietly. "I'm sorry." Lyra touched the blinking device on her shoulder, then drew wavy lines coming from it toward the sky. "A distress signal," Jack guessed. "You're calling for help." Lyra nodded again, but then her shoulders slumped. She drew the wavy lines again, but made them smaller and broken. "The signal is weak," Jack said. "It's not getting through." Lyra confirmed. With another nod, Jack thought for a moment, then stood up. "Wait here," he said, making the staying motion again. He went to the back room and dug through some boxes until he found what he was looking for: his grandfather's old ham radio equipment. It wasn't much, and Jack wasn't even sure if it still worked, but it had components that might be useful. When he returned with the box, Lyra's eyes widened. Jack set it down and opened it, showing her the various electronic parts inside. "Maybe we can boost your signal," he said, pointing to her device, and then to the radio parts. Together, for the first time, Lyra moved away from her corner. She came forward cautiously, still keeping the blanket around her shoulders. She examined the radio components with obvious interest. Her long fingers picked up a circuit board, turning it over carefully. She looked up at Jack, and this time her almost smile was broader. She pointed to the device on her shoulder, then to the radio parts, then made a gesture of bringing them together. "Yes," Jack said. "We'll try to fix it." Over the next few hours, they worked side by side. Jack was no engineer, but he knew the basics of his grandfather's radio. Lyra clearly understood far more about electronics than he did. She disassembled parts of the radio with surprising skill, selecting specific components and connecting them to her device using thin filaments. From her suit as they worked, Jack continued trying to communicate. He drew pictures of the forest, the mountains, and pointed out the window to show her where they were. Lyra seemed to grasp concepts quickly. She drew pictures of her own, strange landscapes with two suns in the sky, structures that looked nothing like human buildings, and creatures Jack couldn't begin to identify. By mid-afternoon, they had made progress. The blinking light on Lyra's device now pulsed stronger and faster. She made a sound that Jack interpreted as satisfaction. "Will they come for you?" Jack asked, pointing to the sky and then to her. Lyra's expression grew complicated. She drew more figures in their notebook, then the Earth, then what looked like other alien beings in ships surrounding the planet. She drew question marks around them. "They don't know about us officially," Jack guessed. "We're being observed?" Lyra nodded. Then she pointed to herself and made a motion like she was writing or recording. "You're a researcher," Jack said. "Studying." U.S. Another nod, and that almost smile again. Jack sat back, letting this sink in. All his life, he'd wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now he knew the answer, sitting across from him wrapped in his spare blanket, trying to fix a distress beacon with parts from his grandfather's old radio. "Well," Jack said finally, "I hope when your people do make contact officially, they judge us by our best qualities, not our worst." Lyra might not have understood his words, but something in his tone made her reach out and briefly touch his hand, the first time she had initiated contact. Her skin felt smooth and surprisingly warm. Outside, a bird called, breaking the moment. Jack stood up and went to the window. The sky was clear now, the forest peaceful in the afternoon sun. Somewhere out there was Lyra's crashed ship. Somewhere beyond that Her people might be looking for her. Jack turned back to Lyra. Hungry again? He asked, making the eating gesture. As Lyra nodded, Jack realized that his simple retreat to escape his problems had become something much more important. He was now part of something bigger than himself. First contact with another species. And somehow, that made his own troubles seem very small indeed. 3 days passed in a strange but comfortable routine. Jack and Lyra worked on improving her distress beacon each morning. In the afternoons, Jack would show Lyra books, maps, and photos he had brought to the cabin. Lyra learned English words with amazing speed. By the third day, she could say simple phrases. "This good," she would say, pointing to food she liked. Or "sky beautiful," when looking out the window at sunset. Jack learned things about Lyra too. Her people came from a planet much farther from its sun than Earth. This explained why she seemed to enjoy the cool mountain air, but would retreat from direct sunlight. She could see in the dark better than any human. Once, when Jack dropped his flashlight in the dark cabin, Lyra found it immediately. On the morning of the 4th day, Jack woke to the sound of a helicopter. It was distant, but in the quiet forest, a noise carried clearly. Jack went to the window and looked out. He couldn't see the helicopter, but the sound was coming from the east. Lyra joined him at the window, her head tilted in a questioning way. "Flying machine," Jack explained. "Human flying machine." Lyra's silver eyes widened. She pointed to her distress beacon, which now blinked with a steady, strong pulse. "They find?" she asked. Jack hadn't considered this possibility. Could human technology detect Lyra's alien beacon? He didn't know, but the timing made him uneasy. "Maybe," he said. "We should be careful." Throughout the day, the helicopter sound came and went. Sometimes it seemed closer, other times more distant. By afternoon, Jack decided to check the surrounding area. He needed to know if someone was searching for something, or someone. "I go look," Jack told Lyra, pointing outside. "You stay here, stay inside." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "Careful, Jack," she said. Jack put on his jacket and boots and went outside. The forest was quiet, except for bird calls and the rustle of leaves in the light breeze. He walked in a wide circle around the cabin, looking for any signs of visitors. About half a mile from the cabin, Jack found something that made his heart beat faster. Fresh boot prints in the soft earth beside a small stream. The prints were not his own. They were made by heavy boots with a distinctive tread pattern. Military-style boots. Next to the boot prints was something else. A small metal device stuck into the ground on a spike. It had a tiny antenna and a blinking red light. Some kind of sensor or monitoring equipment. Jack looked around carefully. Seeing no one, he backed away slowly, leaving the device untouched. He took a different route back to the cabin, moving quietly through the trees. When he returned, Lyra was waiting anxiously by the window. She could tell from his face that something was wrong. "People looking," Jack said simply. "Not friendly. People." Lyra's silver eyes clouded with worry. She touched her distress beacon. "Turn off?" she asked. Jack considered this. If the beacon was what had drawn attention, turning it off might help. But it was also Lyra's only hope of contacting her own people. "Not yet," he decided, "but we need to be ready, to hide or to leave." That evening, as darkness fell, the helicopter sound returned. This time, it was much closer. Jack turned off all lights in the cabin and went to the window. In the distance, he could see a searchlight sweeping across the forest canopy. "They're looking for your ship," Jack said. "Or for you." Lyra stood beside him, watching the distant light. "Why they won't find me?" she asked. Jack thought about how to explain. "Some humans, afraid of different," he said simply. "Some humans Want ... power. Technology. Lyra seemed to understand. She touched her suit, then her distress beacon. My things. They want take. Yes, Jack nodded, and maybe you too. Lyra's expression hardened. She walked to the notepad they had been using to communicate and drew a quick series of images. Earth, then several human figures in what looked like lab coats, then Lyra on what appeared to be a table or bed, surrounded by the humans. They study me, she said, like animal. Jack looked at the drawing and nodded grimly. Some might, yes. Lyra drew another image, a spacecraft, much larger than the small craft she had arrived in. Then many alien figures with weapons. Your people would come to rescue you? Jack asked. With force? Lyra nodded. If no, I prisoner. Yes. Come, fight. Jack felt a chill. The implications were clear. If Lyra was captured by military or government forces, it could potentially trigger a conflict with their species. Conflict humans were not prepared for. We won't let that happen, Jack said firmly. That night, they made plans. Jack knew the cabin wasn't safe anymore. Tomorrow, they would pack supplies and move deeper into the forest, closer to where Lyra had crashed. Perhaps her ship still contained equipment that could help strengthen her distress signal without attracting. Human attention dot as they prepared to sleep. The helicopter made one final pass, closer than ever. Its searchlight swept over the trees near the cabin, but didn't quite reach them. Jack and Lyra sat in darkness, watching through the window until it moved away. Jack, Lyra said softly after the helicopter sounds had faded. Thank you. Help me. Jack turned to her. In the dim moonlight coming through the window, her blue skin had an almost luminous quality. Why you help? She asked. Not know me, I different. Jack thought about this. Why had he helped her? He could have called authorities immediately. Most people probably would have. Different isn't bad, he said finally. Just ... different. And you needed help. That's enough reason. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand over his. Her touch was gentle, her skin warm. My world, she said. Many think humans ... dangerous, violent. She looked directly into Jack's eyes. I tell different story now. The moment was interrupted by a new sound outside, the rumble of vehicles on the dirt road leading to the cabin. Jack jumped up and peered out the window. In the distance, he could see headlights approaching through the trees. They're coming, he said urgently. Now, Lyra stood quickly. What we do? Jack thought fast. The cabin had one feature his grandfather had built that few people knew about. A small cellar accessible through a trapdoor beneath the old rug in the bedroom. It had been built during colder war times as a shelter. This way, Jack said, leading Lyra to the bedroom. He pulled back the rug and revealed the trapdoor. Opening it showed a narrow ladder leading down into darkness. Hide, he told Lyra. Stay quiet, no matter what. Lyra looked at the dark opening, then back at Jack. You come too, she said. Jack shook his head. Someone needs to talk to them. Make them leave. He reached out and gently touched her shoulder. Trust me. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She climbed down the ladder into the darkness. Jack handed down a flashlight and a bottle of water. I come back soon, he promised, then closed the trapdoor and replaced the rug dot just as he finished. Bright lights swept across the cabin windows. Car doors slammed outside. Jack took a deep breath and went to the front door, trying to look casual and confused as he opened it. 3 men in dark uniforms stood on his porch. Behind them, 2 black SUVs were parked, their headlights illuminating the clearing around the cabin. Can I help you? Jack asked, feigning sleepiness. The man in front held up an ID badge that Jack couldn't quite make out in the darkness. Government research team, the man said. We're investigating an atmospheric anomaly in this area. Mind if we ask you a few questions, Mr. Miller? Jack's heart skipped a beat. They knew his name, but he kept his expression neutral as he replied. It's pretty late for questions, he said. But I guess so. As he stepped aside to let them enter, Jack wondered how long he could keep Lyra hidden, and what would happen if these men discovered what was really hiding in his grandfather's cabin. The three men walked into Jack's cabin, their eyes scanning every corner. The leader was tall with short gray hair. The other two were younger and moved with military precision. Nice place, the leader said. Been here long? About 4 days. Jack answered, trying to sound calm. It was my grandfather's cabin, the leader nodded. I'm Agent Allen. This is Agent Reeves and Agent Powell. He didn't offer to shake hands. Mind if we look around? Jack knew this wasn't really a question. These men would search the cabin whether he agreed or not. What exactly are you looking for? Jack asked. You mentioned an atmospheric anomaly? Agent Allen smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Just routine checks. 3 nights ago, our satellites detected unusual energy readings in this area. Probably nothing, but we need to check it out. 3 nights ago, the night of the storm, the night Lyra crashed. I was here that night, Jack said. There was a bad storm. Lightning hit somewhere in the forest. I heard a tree fall. The agents exchanged glances. Agent Reeves pulled out a small device that looked like a phone, but had a strange antenna attached to it. He began walking slowly around the cabin, holding the device out in front of him. It made a soft beeping sound. That was some storm, Agent Allen continued. But what we detected wasn't lightning. It was something different. Jack shrugged. I don't know anything about that. I just came up here to get away for a while. Going through a divorce. Agent Allen's face softened slightly. Sorry to hear that. Tough break. Then his expression became professional again. Noticed anything unusual since you've been here? Lights in the sky? Strange sounds? People who shouldn't be here? No, Jack said firmly. Just peace and quiet. That's all I wanted. Agent Reeves had reached the bedroom door. The beeping on his device grew slightly faster. Jack's heart beat faster too. The trapdoor where Lyra was hiding was just beneath the rug in that room. Mind if we check in here? Agent Reeves asked, already pushing the door open. It's just a bedroom, Jack said, following them. Nothing special. The 3 agents entered the bedroom. Jack watched nervously as Agent Reeves moved his device around the room. When he passed it over the rug covering the trapdoor, the beeping increased noticeably. Something interesting under here, Agent Reeves said, looking at Agent Allen. Jack's mouth went dry. That's just an old storage cellar, he said quickly. My grandfather used it for keeping food cool before he had a proper refrigerator. Agent Allen looked at Jack with narrowed eyes. Mind if we take a look? Before Jack could answer, Agent Powell moved forward and pulled back the rug, revealing the trapdoor. Jack's heart sank. There was no way to stop them now. Agent Powell grabbed the handle of the trapdoor and pulled it open. Jack held his breath. The cellar below was dark and empty. Jack blinked in surprise. Where was Lyra? Agent Powell shined his flashlight down into the cellar. There were some old shelves, a few empty jars, and nothing else. No sign of Lyra. Just like I said, Jack managed. Old storage cellar. Agent Reeves frowned at his device, which was still beeping rapidly. I'm getting strong readings from down there. Something's not right. Agent Powell climbed down the ladder into the cellar. Jack watched anxiously as the agent searched the small space, tapping on walls and checking. Behind the old shelves. After a few minutes, he climbed back up. Nothing down there, sir, he reported to Agent Allen. Just old shelves and dust. Agent Allen looked puzzled. He turned to Jack. "Mr. Miller, we need to be honest with each other. Our instruments are detecting something unusual. If you know anything, now would be the time to share it." Jack spread his hands. "I really don't know what to tell you. I'm just a guy taking some time off in his grandfather's cabin." Agent Allen studied Jack's face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, but we're not done here. We'll be searching the surrounding area thoroughly. If you see or hear anything unusual, there's a number on this card." He handed Jack a plain white business card with only a phone number printed on it. "Call immediately. It's for your own safety." "My safety?" Jack asked. "What exactly do you think is out there?" Agent Allen's face became very serious. "Let's just say if you encounter anything not from around here, it could be dangerous, very dangerous." The agents left the bedroom. Jack followed them to the front door, his mind racing. Where had Lara gone? Had she somehow escaped while he was talking to the agents? At the door, Agent Allen turned back to Jack. "We'll be in the area for the next few days. Don't go wandering. In the woods, especially at night." Jack nodded. "I'll stay close to the cabin." "Good man," Agent Allen said. Then, almost as an afterthought, "By the way, your power seems to be out. Need any help with that?" "No thanks," Jack said. "The generator's just out of fuel. I'll fill it tomorrow." After the agents left, Jack waited by the window until their SUVs disappeared down the dirt road. Then he rushed back to the bedroom. "Lara?" He called softly, looking around the room. "Where are you?" For several seconds, there was silence. Then, to Jack's amazement, a section of the bedroom wall seemed to shimmer and fade away. Lyra stepped through what had appeared to be solid wall, but was actually some kind of doorway Jack couldn't see. She held a small device in her hand. "Hidden door," she explained, pointing to the device. "From my ship. I get when you sleep last night." Jack stared in amazement. "You made an invisible door?" "That's incredible," Lyra nodded. "Emergency tool. Hide door, hide me, and not see." "But their device detected something," Jack said. "That's why they checked the cellar." Lyra frowned. "Energy from tool. Hard to hide." She looked worried. "They come back?" "Yes," Jack said. "They'll be searching the forest, looking for your ship, I think, and for you." Lyra's expression became determined. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark forest. "Must go to my ship," she said. "Need better ... communication." She pointed to her distress beacon. "Fix better. Call my people." Jack realized she was right. The agents would keep searching, and eventually they would find either Lyra or her ship. Their only hope was to reach the ship first and find a way to contact Lyra's people before the agents could capture her. "How far is your ship?" Jack asked. Lyra thought for a moment, then walked to their notepad and drew a quick map. She marked the cabin, then drew a path through the forest to a spot about 3 miles away, near a small lake Jack knew. "We go night," Lyra said. "Safer. I see dark better." Jack nodded. "We'll need supplies." He began gathering things they would need: food, water, his compass, a flashlight, and warm clothes. He found an old backpack in the closet and packed everything inside. Lyra watched him, then touched his arm gently. "Why help still? Dangerous for you." Jack paused in his packing. It was a good question. Why was he risking so much for someone he barely knew? Someone not even from his world? The agents clearly thought he was harboring something dangerous. "Because it's the right thing to do," Jack said simply. "And because I believe you're not a threat. Those men out there, they haven't even met you, and they've already decided you're dangerous." Lyra's silver eyes seemed to shine with emotion. "Thank you, Jack." They waited until midnight before slipping out of the cabin. The night was clear and cool, with a half-moon providing just enough light to see by. Jack wore dark clothes and carried the backpack. Lyra had her invisible door device and her distress beacon, now turned off to avoid detection dot as they entered the forest. Jack heard the distant sound of the helicopter returning. He pulled Lyra deeper into the shadows of the trees. "Remember," he whispered, "if we get separated, keep heading toward the lake. I'll find you there." Lyra nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. Together, they disappeared into the darkness of the forest, beginning their dangerous journey to Lyra's crashed ship and hopefully to her freedom. Jack and Lyra moved through the dark forest quietly. The night sounds surrounded them, crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, and the occasional hoot of an owl. Lyra moved with surprising grace, her feet barely making a sound. On the forest floor, Jack followed, trying to step where she stepped. Twice they had to hide as the helicopter passed overhead, its searchlight cutting through the trees. Each time, Lyra used her invisible door device to create a hidden space where they could stand undetected until the danger passed. After 2 hours of careful travel, they reached a small stream. Jack checked his compass by the light of the moon. "We're heading the right way," he whispered. "Your ship should be about a mile ahead." Lyra nodded. She pointed to her chest, then to the direction they were traveling. "Feel it," she said softly. "Connection." They continued their journey, moving more slowly now as the forest grew denser. Jack noticed that Lyra seemed to grow more alert, her head turning at sounds he couldn't hear. She was leading now, drawn to her ship by some connection he didn't understand. Suddenly, Lyra stopped and put her hand on Jack's arm. She pointed ahead. Through the trees, Jack could see lights, flashlights moving in the darkness. People were already at the crash site. "The agents," Jack whispered. "They found your ship." Lyra's silver eyes narrowed. She motioned for Jack to follow her as she moved to the right, circling around to approach from a different direction. They crept forward until they could see what was happening in a small clearing. Lyra's ship lay partially buried in the earth. It was smaller than Jack had expected, about the size of a small car, with a sleek, curved shape unlike any aircraft he had seen. The metal of its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Around the ship, 6 men in the same dark uniforms worked under powerful portable lights. They had set up some kind of equipment and appeared to be scanning the ship. 2 of them were trying to open what looked like a door or hatch. "They can't get in," Lyra whispered, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "Need my blood code." "Your what?" Jack asked quietly. Lyra touched her wrist. "Ship knows me. Only opens for me." Jack watched as the agents continued to work. He spotted Agent Allen standing slightly apart, talking on a phone. Even from this distance, Jack could see the man looked excited. "What do we do now?" Jack asked. Lyra studied the scene for a moment. Then she reached into a pocket of her suit and pulled out 2 small devices. One was round, like a coin, but thicker. The other was long and thin, resembling a pen. "Distraction," she said, holding up the coin-like object. "Then quick move." She pointed to the pen-like device, then to her ship. Jack understood. "You need to get to your ship. How long will the distraction last?" Lyra held up 3 fingers. 3 minutes, maybe 4. "That's not much time," Jack said. "And after you get to your ship, then what?" Lyra's expression softened. She touched Jack's face gently. "I call my people. They come. Take me home." The realization hit Jack. This was goodbye. If Lyra reached her ship, she would be leaving, going back to her world millions of miles away. "I'll create a distraction too," Jack decided. "Give you more time." Lyra shook her head. "Dangerous for you." I'll be fine, Jack insisted. I'm just a confused hiker who got lost in the woods, remember? Before Lyra could argue further, Jack took off his backpack and removed his jacket. On my signal, use your distraction device. I'll head over to the left, away from your ship. When they're busy with me and your distraction, you get to your ship. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She handed Jack the invisible door device. Keep this. Hide if danger. Jack took the device, touched by her concern. Ready? Lyra nodded again. Jack took a deep breath, then moved away, circling to approach the crash site from the left side. When he was in position, he waved to Lyra, who was barely visible in the shadows. Jack put on his best confused expression and stumbled forward into the light, waving his arms. Hello? Hey, what's going on here? He called out. All the agents turned at once, several drawing weapons. Agent. Alan stepped forward, recognizing Jack. Mr. Miller? What are you doing out here? I thought I told you to stay at the cabin. Jack rubbed his head, looking embarrassed. I know. But I couldn't sleep, and I saw lights in the forest. Thought maybe hikers were lost. What is that thing? He pointed at the ship, trying to look shocked out as the agent's attention focused. On Jack, there was a sudden, brilliant flash of light from the opposite side of the clearing, followed by a sound like thunder. All heads turned toward the distraction device Lyra had activated. What the hell was that? Agent Allen shouted. Powell, Reeves, check it out. Two agents ran toward the light, which was now pulsing in different colors. Jack watched from the E, corner of his eye, as a shadow, Lyra, darted from the trees toward her ship. She moved so quickly she was almost a blur. Agent Allen turned back to Jack. Mr. Miller, you need to leave right now. This is a dangerous situation. What's going on? Jack insisted, trying to keep the agent's attention. Is that some kind of experimental aircraft? Are you guys from NASA? As Jack spoke, he saw Lyra reach her ship. She placed her hand on the hull, and a door that hadn't been visible before slid open. None of the agents had noticed yet. They were either watching the light show or focused on Jack. Sir, I'm only going to say this once more, Agent Allen said firmly. Leave now, or we'll have to detain you. At that moment, one of the agents shouted and pointed at Lyra's ship. The door! It's opening! Every agent turned at once. Lyra was already halfway inside her ship. Agent Allen's eyes widened in shock. Stop her, he shouted. Don't let it get away. The agents ran toward the ship, but they were too late. Lyra was inside, and the door was closing. Jack used the distraction to back away into the trees. He knew he should run, but he couldn't bear to leave without seeing Lyra one last time. The ship began to hum, a soft sound that gradually increased in pitch. The agents were shouting, some pointing weapons at the ship, others speaking urgently. Into radios. Agent Allen was ordering everyone to stand back. Suddenly, the ship's door opened again. The agents froze. Lyra stood in the doorway, her silver eyes scanning the clearing until she found Jack in the shadows. She extended her hand, pointing directly at him. The agents turned, following her gesture, spotting Jack at the edge of the clearing. He nodded. Enemy, Lyra said, her voice carrying clearly across the space. He friend. First friend on Earth. She looked at the agents. Remember this. Not all humans fear different. Then, to Jack's shock, she motioned for him to come to her. Jack, she called. Come. The agents looked between Jack and the alien, confusion evident on their faces. Agent. Allen raised his hand, stopping his men from interfering. Jack stepped forward, his heart pounding. You want me to come with you? Lyra nodded. Ambassador, she said. My world meets yours. Proper way. Not fear, not hide. Jack understood what she was offering, a chance to be the first human to visit her world, to help establish peaceful contact between their species. It was far more than an adventure. It was a responsibility. He looked back at his world, the forest, the night sky, the life he had left behind. Then he looked at Lyra, standing in the doorway of her ship, hand extended toward him. Jack walked forward. The agents parted, too stunned to stop him. Agent Allen called out something, but Jack wasn't listening anymore. He reached the ship and took Lyra's hand. Her fingers wrapped around his, warm and strong. She smiled, a real smile this time, not the almost smile from before. "Ready?" she asked. Jack nodded. "Ready." As they stepped together into the ship, Jack heard Agent Allen's voice behind him. "Miller, what are you doing? You can't go with with it." Jack turned back one last time. "Her name is Lyra," he said, "and I'm going to make sure you see her again. But next time, as a friend, not something to fear." The door closed behind them. Inside, the ship was small, but filled with soft light and strange controls. Lyra moved to what appeared to be the pilot's seat and gestured for Jack to sit beside her. "Not afraid?" she asked, looking at him with concern. Jack smiled. Little, but more excited. He looked around the ship. "I never thought I'd be doing something like this." Lyra touched a panel, and the ship hummed to life. Through a clear panel, Jack could see the agents backing away, some pointing weapons, others simply staring in disbelief. "Your world," Lyra said. "Meet my world. Better way." The ship rose silently into the night sky. Jack watched as the clearing grew smaller below them, the agents' flashlights like tiny stars on the ground. Then the trees, the mountains, and finally the curve of the earth itself came into view. As they accelerated toward the stars, Jack thought about the chain of events that had led him here. A broken marriage, a retreat to a cabin in the woods, and an alien woman who had flinched when he reached for her. Now they were heading toward her home, and a new chapter not just for Jack, but possibly for all of humanity. "Thank you," Jack said, "for trusting me." Lyra's silver eyes reflected the starlight as she looked at him. "Trust," she said. "Good beginning." Together, they left Earth behind, traveling toward a future neither of them could have imagined just days before, a future that had begun with fear, but was now filled with hope.